God eftermiddag, good day, ahlan wa sahlan, bienvenido, khosh amdid, sodao, te'aven bachtale. Have I mentioned all the languages seen on the roll-up downstairs? I welcome you to this talk on gender justice. My name is Anas, and I'm Digital Marketing Manager at Islamic Relief Sweden, who's hosting this talk. I'm joined by Zamzam, who's a gender protection and inclusion advisor at Islamic Relief Sweden. So give it up for this fantastic human being, mashallah. Before we start, I'd like to invite you to reflect on the word justice. What comes to your mind? And if anyone feels brave, please do share with us. It's more of an internal question. Reflect on this word, justice. Zamzam, it is an honor to share this stage with you. You're someone with a long-time commitment to justice and I guess have a lot to share. So let's start with a soft qualitative question. Can you tell us how Islamic Relief works with gender rights in the so-called Global South? And can you give us some general examples of this work?
Thank you very much, Anas. My name is Zamzam. I'm the Gender Protection Inclusion Advisor at Islamic Relief. Before I answer your question, I would like to give you a brief introduction about Islamic Relief, a very few seconds. Islamic Relief was established in the UK in 1984 by a doctor and a group of Birmingham University students. We were responding to a drought in 1984, and today as we speak here, 38 years after, we have 40 offices around the world. And we're also dealing with the same problem today as we speak in this arena. There is the same drought going on in the Horn of Africa. 36.1 million people are affected in the same region as to why our organization was established. So that's a brief introduction about Islamic Relief.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Coming to the question of what Islamic Relief does in the Global South, Islamic Relief works in two fronts, in both humanitarian and development. We have interventions in many crises. Whenever you hear there's a war going on around the world, what you don't hear is the war within the war. Whenever women and girls share the destruction, the displacement, loss of livelihood, they share everything everybody in that particular place is facing. However, there is something hidden under it, which is the gender-based violence that faces women and girls in different parts of the conflict areas in the world. So what Islamic Relief does is, in our interventions, we analyze how women and girls are affected by the different crises going on. What we do is we interview women, we talk to women, ask them what their priorities, their concerns, and their capacity is when it comes to the different conflicts going on. So that's what we basically do, and then we base our interventions on those analyses that we have, the questions we have asked them, the results we have received. And then we collect something called sex, age, gender, disability, disaggregated data, whereby we base our interventions on.
Thank you so much for that detailed answer. I would like to just stop at something you said. You mentioned emergency appeals and acute needs. As someone with a background in fundraising, I know all too well the importance of making sure that funds are quickly gathered and allocated to those in needs. But can you tell us about how Islamic Relief work in terms of development projects as well?
In terms of development projects, we have projects in, for example, if I take Mali as an example, we have a development project whereby we organize civil society, community-based organizations, bring women together for them to come up and vote and take decision on their small organizations, and we help them be economically strong by shea butter production in Mali, for example. And the development projects implemented by Islamic Relief are not so many. However, what they do for us is that they give a longer-term impact. For example, I'll tell you a story of a woman I met in Mali. We travel from Sweden and go to Mali and other parts of the world to look at the impact our projects had on these different groups of people. And what happened to me in this specific time is that I traveled to Mali and met a group of women who were helping them to produce shea butter for them to sustain themselves. And women sustaining themselves economically is something Islamic Relief believes strongly, and that it leads to freedom and women's independence. So asking these women these questions of what has our project done for you is a very important question for us, so that we can strategize and look again whether our projects are successful or maybe if we need to make changes. And this particular woman, I was talking to a group of women in a room, and this particular woman, I asked, she was quiet and wasn't talking, and I asked her, hey, can you please give me your opinion on our project? And since I didn't speak the local language, she took me by the hand and walked with me. And I was asking the translator, why is she pulling me aside? And he said she wants to take us to her house and compound. So she took me to her compound, and she went into her small house and came up with a garment, a child's clothes. And she told me that the project has helped her to make a decision. And for me, I thought at first that she means decision in terms of where she was in the CBOs that we created, that she was making a decision. And I asked a follow-up question whereby she answered that her husband is the one who was making the decisions before he leaves in the morning, and telling her what to cook when he comes back, the food he wants to eat. And she said that she is the one who, she doesn't have to cook whatever he says every day. She can also decide for herself. So for me, who thought I had very much commonality with Mali because I'm an African, I was a little bit shocked, and I was like, oh my God, is there somebody who doesn't decide on what they want, a woman, for that matter, who doesn't decide what she wants to cook on her day-to-day life. And she said, she showed me the garment and said she's also planning to take her 9-year-old daughter to school because her son, she has 3 children, her 2 sons go to school, but her husband had decided that her daughter shouldn't go to school because of their financial situation wasn't allowing, and who is the easy one to kick out? The girl. So she was planning to take her daughter to school. And you know, the UN has come with a lot of declarations in terms of human rights in general, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Convention of Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. However, as much as human rights is a universal idea, it sometimes differs from village to village. It differs. It's very context-based, and it can be different in one place than the other. So in Mali, that woman is a case that has always stayed with me, that there are women in some parts of the world, when they wake up in the morning, who cannot decide on what they want to cook for their children or for themselves. So economical strengthening of economical status of women is a very important belief Islamic Relief has to works with and has been working with all along. So sorry to have taken a very long question.
No, but case studies are a perfect way of making such a diverse and broad field as gender justice and women's rights more tangible. So I thank you very much for sharing that story. I have a personal story as well. During a field trip to Jordan, we saw firsthand on how effective vocational training helped transform communities, and they invested in entrepreneurship courses with 300 women and who were Syrian refugees. And what they ended up with, number one, having more financial independence, but also bringing more income into the household and making the households and communities prosper. And we'll get back to that later on in the talk. That's a case study from Western Africa. You mentioned Horn of Africa and the drought that is ongoing, or is the worst in 40 years. I know that Islamic Relief has projects over there. Do you have any case studies or examples from the Horn of Africa as well?
Yes, in the Horn of Africa, we, of course, as I mentioned earlier, we're intervening with the droughts and helping save lives, as Islamic Relief has been doing in the last 38 years. but we also have development projects. And one of, I will not mention a specific country in the Horn of Africa, but I'll just talk about the general situation. We were working in a country whereby we were not allowed to talk about rights. Civil society were not allowed to come together and organize themselves. It was forbidden because of the system in place. And so as Islamic Relief, we thought, what can we do to talk about rights? It's impossible in some parts of the world not to talk about rights. You just have to talk about rights. So what we did was we looked at the policy and the laws of the country and what it was allowing us to do. So it was not forbidden to talk about women economical empowerment. It was allowed to talk about early and forced marriage. It was about to talk about gender-based violence. It was about to talk about land rights, and it was allowed to talk about other issues that so long as you do not put the word rights in front of whatever you want to talk the communities with. So in this particular case, we were training women in this particular village we were visiting. There were 500 women who we have trained on early and forced marriage, strengthened them economically by creating small businesses for them and many other things. So as we were visiting, also doing our follow-up work from Sweden, one of the women stood up and said when she was a child, and this is a 60-year-old woman, when she was a child, her father died in an accident, and her uncles came and took everything they owned, and it's the question of inheritance. So her mother and her sisters and her were left stranded in front of their own house while it was raining. And she said when she went through the Islamic Relief training about the right to inheritance, some light went on in her head, and the next morning she did not come back to the training to continue. She went with her relatives to the government office and her children and wrote a will through the government, not through the social system or not through the religious system, through the government that was allowing women to inherit, that she divided what she owned between her children through the government. So it's not as big as the humanitarian interventions that we are doing, but it has more impact. It raises awareness. It gives people to think about their situations, and rights-based projects are very important because it makes civilians to hold their duty bearers accountable when it comes to responsibility and democracy. So thank you. I think we should thank you for sharing your experiences. We're going to go forward this talk. I would like to ask you, from a personal perspective, how does it feel to work with these issues and matters and challenges as Zamzam, beyond the gender and inclusion advisor that you are? It's very interesting when you see people's lives being transformed and women being self-sustained, and it's a very good thing to do. But at the same time, it's frustrating sometimes, and frustration does not take away from us from our responsibility when you see that, for example, in countries in active conflict, sometimes it's very difficult to work with the issue of gender. Even using the word gender or talking about women's issues is sometimes very difficult. So, but what do? We are here, and we will make. We are here to make change, and we have responsibility, and we have to make sure that women and children and girls and people with disability do not just disappear from the arena. And you know, trust me on this one. Whenever you travel to other parts of the world, whenever you want to meet communities and talk to people, you will always talk to the men. Men are the ones in the forefront. The community, they're called the community leaders. And I remember, sorry, I have too many case studies.
No, take all the time.
I was working with another organization in south of Somalia a long time ago, in my early 20s, and the organization was building boreholes in that part of Somalia. What they did was, in building the boreholes, they did not talk to the women. They only spoke to the men. which led to boreholes being built, being dug, and not utilized. Women were still going for a distance to fetch water. And when the evaluator came and asked about why the borehole wasn't being utilized, the women said, we want to walk because we need to come away from the chores at home, the children, the family, and this is our socialization time. So when working in aid and working in generally in emergencies, things are not what they seem to be. One has to go deeper, one has to ask and talk to the communities, and in some communities you can only, it's the men who are at the forefront, so you have to dig in and talk to the women separately. Sometimes they will tell you, oh, the women are here, they want to talk to you, but not necessarily. The women maybe cannot say what they want to say to you in front of the men, so you have to separate them. And that includes having staff who are women who can talk to the women sometimes. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Zamzam. The work that Zamzam has detailed and the case study that she has highlighted is all based on 5 Islamic principles: social justice, sincerity, custodianship, compassion, and excellence. And we're going to look at a video that showcases the following principles and values together with the rest of Islamic Relief's work.
Thank you.
Because of you, Islamic Relief is making a difference in the world. Because of you, when emergencies happen, we're able to respond fast, helping save lives. And when the disaster's over, we don't just leave, we stay, helping to build communities that last. Because of you, we're building water systems, solar-panelled boreholes like this one that harness the power of the sun to bring water to 4 villages at a time. Because of you, we're not only feeding people, we're supplying grain, building irrigation systems, and training the local people so they can grow their own crops and feed themselves. Because of you, we're building hospitals and clinics, providing ambulances and vital equipment so that our doctors and nurses can save lives. Because of you, we're educating children in the heart of the slums and in the remotest areas. We're helping them through exams and training. Together, we're helping them build a real chance of a better future. Because of you, we're building roads, bridges, water systems, even homes. Together, we're building entire villages. Because of you, we're supporting orphans and vulnerable children, like Shamsa and Mubin. With your help, we're giving them food, clothes, security and education, so they can build a better future. Because of you, Islamic Relief's safe villages mean that children are living in a safer world. Together, we are building intelligent solutions to poverty. Each problem requires a unique and different solution. If there's an emergency, we can send in emergency relief like food and water. But whenever possible, Islamic Relief seeks to provide sustainable solutions so that long after we've gone, the people can still support themselves. We call these intelligent solutions because they simply make sense. Together, we're not only helping people in poverty, we're helping people out of poverty, restoring dignity. And it doesn't stop there. Together, we are building a better future. Together, we are Islamic Relief.
Almost brought a tear to my eye. Thank you very much for showcasing this video. Yes, of course. Add. Yes.
I just want to mention what we do in Syria briefly. In Syria, we work with hospitals, as maybe it was in the video, and in those health centers that we work with, we train the health staff to come together, and we train them on how to do psychosocial support for victims of gender-based violence. And in these villages, they're very small villages, And if you don't train them on confidentiality, the patient, the survivor of violence can end up dead. And we also work with the UNHCR in terms of the protection clusters, and we refer people to different organizations that like the Red Cross, Save the Children, and we do service mapping to know who is doing what in this area so that we transfer them to different service providers. So that's one thing we do in Syria, and we do the same in South Sudan. In South Sudan, we train men to be change agents when it comes to domestic violence, and for them to be active and talk about domestic violence and gender-based violence and rape in conflicts. And thank you, Anas.
No, thank you, Zamzam. An applause for Zamzam, please. Again, thank you for your wholesome and honest account. It has been a true pleasure. To the crowd, I would like to invite you to, when you leave this place, that we leave it with a reinvigorated, renewed intention of championing these rights that have been discussed on this stage. And as a literature graduate in Arabic, I can't end this talk without citing a famous Egyptian poet, Ahmed Shawqi, who said, "Al-ummu madrasatun idha a'adattaha a'adatta jilan tayyib al-Araqi." The woman is an institution. If you invest in her, you will end up with the most wholesome generation and society. Thank you very much, Zamzam. Thank you so much, the crowd. Thank you, the technicians, for this amazing work. I just have to tell you that we have international guests from the US and France in an upcoming seminar at 4 p.m. So hopefully we'll see you there, and enjoy the rest of the Forum of Human Rights.
Thank you.
Thank you. Robert, stop it.